Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorry I Like This podcast. My name is Ezra, and I'm joined as always by Caleb. Caleb, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I am glad we're back.
Yes.
It's been an incredible journey, but now we can finally talk about it. And I'm
We can
really
finally
excited.
talk about it.
I'm really excited about it. So,
Yeah.
um, it's been a while, but we knew that this would be a I guess we didn't know, right? We didn't know that it would be this massive of an undertaking.
Yeah.
At least I would think.
No, I had no
Um,
idea. I mean, so we're. I guess we should lay it out. We're talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
mhm,
Full spoilers for the game. Uh, Nothing, no stone left unturned. We're gonna go through in
mhm.
chronological order. Um, Yeah. And I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think of this game is the fact that it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it doesn't stop
Mm-hmm.
expanding until right up until the end.
Yep.
Like there's a moment, and we'll get to it. There was a moment where I broke down. I was like, how could they keep doing this? Because they introduced like I thought I was like almost done, and then they just like blew the doors wide open, and I was like, oh man, I can't keep up with this anymore. Um,
I
so
had that moment too, but I think mine was a little bit later than yours.
no,
But
see, the problem is it happened like multiple times for me. Like it like
okay.
because I had gotten spoiled on like what the last region of the game was, but
Oh.
I was like I was like I had a pretty good idea going in anyways, just because I've played the original, and
Mhm.
I knew where the game was going to end. I knew like where in the timeline the game was going to end, so like
Mhm.
it didn't surprise me that that region was the last region. But what I didn't expect was for two other regions to be in the game, because I didn't know how they were going to handle it. So like there was one region in specifically one whole region I didn't
Uh-huh.
know they were going to put in the game, only because I didn't know how they were going to handle it. So when it happened, I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, this is a lot."
Well, I heard that like they were taking the liberty of like they were taking the liberty of like not doing it in the exact order they did in the original.
Yeah.
I had heard about that because I think I saw like an article that they were gonna skip Wu Tai for this one and save it for the next one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um
Yeah,
I mean
cuz
there's still a presence of Wu Tai in it, but it's not like you know,
it's not a
a big
region.
no, no.
Yeah.
So I mean I did hear about that, and I guess that's what makes my experience, fun too, is like I know that even though I don't have anything to go off of from the original, I know that people are also experiencing this in a completely different context, in a
Yeah.
completely different way. And, I feel like the end of Remake really cemented that that possibility, the idea, like that's the final line of the game is, the unknown journey will continue. Like
Yeah.
nobody knew prior to that. I don't think anybody knew that they were like not just remaking it, but actually retelling the story. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I think that was the big like they were going to make some adaptations, but I think for the most part, I think the general consensus was that they were going to just really expand on the original, not really change some stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm an outsider perspective in this, but
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, I love this game. Like as far
Yeah.
as like both remake and this one. So, I'm a diehard fan. I'll just put
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say personally, this game exceeded every expectation I possibly could have had for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, let's let's get started. Let's
Mm-hmm.
and chapter 1, Fall of a Hero. We open not on Cloud and the gang, but Zack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Caleb, you actually have a little bit of a little bit more knowledge than me because I haven't
Mm-hmm.
played through Crisis Core, and you have. So
Mm-hmm.
you're maybe a little bit more attached to Zack than I am. But I will
Oh,
say
yeah.
I I really enjoyed a lot of Zack's stuff,
Mm-hmm.
even though it was very few and far between. Whenever he
Yeah.
shows up, it's like, okay, they're cooking something interesting here,
Yeah.
but they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
they're not like willing to tell us. And it really all comes to a head in the final chapter. So we'll probably not talk a lot about the Zack stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I was super interested that he was playable. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't expecting him to be
That was
playable
huge.
in the very first the first
Like right
time
away.
any character is playable, Zack is playable. I was not
Yeah.
expecting that.
And correct me if I'm wrong. They didn't even put that in the demo, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that wasn't in the demo.
Yeah.
The demo opens basically like right after
Right.
that
Right. Yeah.
fight.
Yeah. Yeah. When they go to yeah, the flashback. I
Yeah.
thought that's what it was, but um, God. See, here's the thing. Crisis Core does change your perspective. I
Yeah.
do think it does. Like the like Crisis Core does a fantastic job of a prequel. And I'm not going to. This isn't a Crisis Core review, but we're talking about Zack a little bit, so I'm going to just talk briefly about what it set up for the characters.
Yeah.
Like I think it brings a whole new context to the next portion that we're going to talk about in the story. But the also just how characters feel, the dynamics.
Yeah.
I really do think that um, obviously the original. I don't have the original go on, so I'm making an assumption. I think the original obviously didn't have the context of Crisis Core involved,
Yeah.
and I think one of the strongest suits that they've done in with the remake and rebirth is that they are going with the idea. No, this is specifically all the events that happen in there is completely canon,
Yeah. Yeah.
and um, you know, like even in the original timeline that we're going through with Cloud and everything, not this alternative timeline that Zack survives,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, we start off in that alternative timeline, and you know, I think everybody, I don't know, I don't know if you felt the same way when playing it, but I know I was very much getting confused right away, really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm like, what, what I mean, and not in a bad way. It's more of like you said, they're cooking something here, like
Yeah.
and I think Zack provides in the story an interesting perspective of what could happen
Yeah.
and why things are so important and why things go the route they do.
Well, and
Um,
sorry, I just want to
Go
add. I
ahead.
want to add to that. He also provides an opportunity to check back in on the Midgar
Mm-hmm.
characters in a way that wouldn't be possible with
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
original cast.
Because I mean, throughout the game and through the original cast, you only hear them go, "Oh, I wonder what's going on there. I wonder what." You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
know, you hear from the character's perspective, but you don't see anything. And
Yeah.
I agree with your point that it does provide an interesting context.
Yeah.
Um,
Although
and it's a great way to check in.
it is weird because it's pretty clear that like Zach is both in his own timeline and in a
Mm-hmm.
timeline where remake happened, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he's in some like weird multiverse version of both. So like
Mm-hmm.
because there are times where like he's talking to Biggs and he's like, oh yeah, you know, Cloud was doing X, Y, and Z, and he's like, wow, Cloud really got up to stuff.
Oh yeah,
um
yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
and so like it is like a weird, I still don't quite have a grasp on that, and I'm not sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to have a grasp on that.
I don't think we're I don't think we're supposed to do it. I think we're supposed to um, have a lot of questions going into part 3.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
I'll
sure,
be
for
honest.
sure. Yeah, this is definitely a setup game as much as it had, even though it like has a finale and every you know
Mm-hmm.
it kind of breaks off neatly. It is like, okay, I do have more questions than I have answers right now.
Well, that's the thing, you know. I mean, this game starts off with the feeling that I think just feels like a straight continuation, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I think to myself that like the way I like the way I see it, I mean, remake and rebirth, and then part 3 is going to be like the way I'm going to see it is one large game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear
Like,
exactly what you're saying.
yeah, it's being split up, but it still feels like, you know, I don't know. I guess I don't know where I'm going with it anymore. But other than it feels like it's going to be. I think they're designing this game to be like, yeah, you can quite literally play it all at once. Still,
Yeah.
like it won't feel like a beginning, middle, and end. It'll just feel like the beginning game, the middle game, and then the end. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? I guess that's my point. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally get that. It'll be like having, you know, one game spread across 3 discs, except this time
Mm-hmm.
you paid for each disc rather than just uh the one complete package. So, you know, we open on Zach. It's a little confusing. Cut to black, or fade to black, I guess. And we start with the fall of a hero, the Nibelheim section of the game,
Mm-hmm.
ripped. I mean, beat for beat, exactly the same as uh, the original, as far as I could tell. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not exactly, because there's some stuff like um, like in the
The
original.
Sephiroth be playable for a brief moment. Kind
Well,
of.
he's playable in the original.
Oh, is he?
But
Oh, okay.
he's like, but like he's going around like one shotting stuff rather than like it being
Oh.
like a like an involved uh section of the game. It's much more like, oh, look at how powerful Sephiroth is, rather than
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's really strong in this section of the game. Like, he's the playable Sephiroth is really powerful, but he's not just like one shotting dragons. That's not what he's doing. Um, so it goes. I mean, like, it's basically, you know, if you chopped off this part of the game and put it onto remake, I wouldn't think it's a different game, really. Other than like Cloud's moveset being different, I would be like, oh, this is just the same thing. Which
Yeah.
isn't bad, but it's just like it's pretty close to what we've come to expect. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that
Well,
said,
it's interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go finish your point. Finish your point.
I was just gonna say, it's all like really well done, and some of the stuff that they like directly took from the original and just updated was excellent. I mean, the section where Sephiroth burns down the village is like 10 out of 10 no notes material.
Yeah.
Like there's some stuff that like I could like argue with somebody and be like, okay, this part of the game you didn't like, this part of the game you did like. I'd be like, but for any fan of the original, stuff like the Nibelheim segment has to be just like there's nothing better than seeing Sephiroth, seeing that iconic shot of Sephiroth in the flames, and yeah.
It's funny because I almost have the same feelings.
Yeah.
Because not because I have, like I said, I haven't played the original, but a lot of there's the whole Nibelheim segment in Crisis Core as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
I mean that was
that's the finale of the game is
right,
the Nibelheim segment. Yeah.
and the obviously if you don't know any better, it's interesting to think that if you don't know any better, you I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. It's interesting because if you don't know any better, you'd think that Cloud was the one that went through all those events.
Yeah.
But really it's Zack that went through all that, and
Yeah.
I love how like they like did Zack's personality through Cloud the whole time.
Yeah,
Like,
they did a really
like,
good job of that.
and I think that really sets the tone. I think it's a good way to set the tone, get us back into that idea.
Yeah. Well,
Of
it's really cool too that they have a Shinra guy who's there. If you look at the footage, he's got like blonde hair and Cloud's complexion. So like you have like a little bit of a hint of what's going on,
yep.
but if you don't know, I mean, this is a point that it will become a plot point in part 3.
I thought they were going to do it in this one. I was
Yeah,
waiting for
no,
it.
they
I mean, they kind of did.
They kinda did, but they really held back. I was surprised too. I thought they were gonna do. I part of me was like, oh, I must have gotten events mixed around in my head because I thought that reveal came like about at the same time that the end of the game happens. But I was wrong. And that's yeah. But yeah, that like there's some really cool stuff there where they're like teasing the whole like Cloud Zack replacement trauma thing, because there's more to that story. It's not just like Cloud replaced himself with Zack and his memories. There's like more going on.
Right.
As is, typical Final Fantasy. So yeah, I just think, as an opening segment, the Nibelheim segment is excellent. I have really no, other than like I could do without the Mako minigame thing, the where you like take the vacuum and
yeah.
I could do without that.
Yeah, that was not fun. I'm glad it never popped up again in the rest of the game.
Didn't it?
I mean, it kind of did.
It shows up. It shows up when you go back, right?
No, I think it showed up in like a side quest. I want to say it shows up.
Oh, maybe that's what it
it.
is.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I want to say it significantly reduced. Let's just put it that way after that. So.
Yeah, at least. So do you have anything you want to say about chapter 1 before we move on?
Chapter 1 was a really good I think it's a really good starting point from a storytelling perspective.
Yeah.
And I think you and I had a lot of the same feelings through chapter 1.
Yeah.
That said, I did find myself like, okay, I want to play the game. I want to play the game. Of like,
yeah.
You know,
I know what you're saying.
I've already been through this before. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm ready for the next chapter. That's kind of what I had I was kind of waiting on, if that makes sense. And really, it isn't up until, when Sephiroth makes his turn that I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is much more, doable.
No,
I mean, not doable, but I'm engaged now.
Yeah. I debated telling you to play the demo like the night before release or something like that, because I was like, oh, there's like a chance of like saving some time and yada yada yada. But I was actually a little glad I hadn't, because I was like, oh, this actually flows nicer if you, because I played through it on hard mode, and I was like, oh, this is actually a lot cleaner of an experience. But yeah, I can definitely see that it's like, all right, yeah, I'm ready to get into the game a little bit here. And speaking of getting into the game, chapter 2, A New Journey begins. We open in calm. We have Cloud and Tifa have a bit of a spat. Not things, Cloud. I can't remember if this is in the original, and I think it's not. I think specifically this was made, this little plot point was made to make a later section make more sense.
You're still talking about Tifa and Cloud, correct?
Yeah. The section where, or the idea of Cloud not buying that Tifa is still alive.
I could totally buy that. That is an addition, the whole thing, because it's like, for many moments later on in the.
I don't remember that being a thing in the original. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
But Tifa, it is, they reveal very early in this compared to the original that Tifa doesn't remember Cloud being at Nibelheim. That comes later too, but that's a plot point from the original. So
because in Crisis Core, Cloud did everything he could to avoid being in direct contact with Tifa.
Yeah.
So,
well, because he was embarrassed that he didn't manage to become soldier. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, we start out in calm. Cloud and Tifa have their little argument. They kind of make up towards the end of this little section here. We get some banter with Barrett and Red 13. We get Cloud and Aerith hanging out like they normally do. I think it was part of like my experience of this was just like, oh, it's so fun to slip back into this this party, right? Because this is one of the most iconic JRPG parties in history, and so for them to just like slip back in, and it's just all about the writing and the characters. I think it was super solid. And we also get our introduction to Queen's Blood. And I played quite a bit of Queen's Blood throughout the
as did I.
throughout the playthrough. I think probably we'll talk about this later, but there was definitely a point where like side content fell off for me, and not that it became bad, just like I was like, all right, I can't bear the thought of being spoiled, so I have to just get to the end. So, you know, there was a point where Queen's Blood definitely became less of a priority, but before that, I was like, all right, I'm playing Queen's Blood every chance I get, because, you know, it's a fun little card game. You know, I can't say much more than that about it, just because it's exclusively against computer opponents, and if they make like an online version of Queen's Blood, I'll play it. But
100%.
Yeah, it's
100%.
It's right now. It's like, okay, it's a fun mini game.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then we kind of blow the door wide open on the game. Pretty quickly after Shinra attacks Calm, because they're like, oh, the party is, they're here, we gotta find them, and the party escapes, and then we get to the grasslands, the first open world section of the game, and yeah.
I mean, you know, they do a great job at very early on showing you what you can do in this world, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, no, this is going to be an open world game, and you are going to be spending a lot of time in each section of this game. And, you know, I loved Queen's Blood myself. I probably spent a pretty large fraction on Queen's Blood itself in my playthrough of this game. You know, and you know, you kind of like, you think it's all casual, you know, you're having a great time, and then there's a side story to it. Yeah. There's a full-on side story to it, and you're like, oh, this is interesting, you know. And I don't know how far you got with it, but
I didn't get very far. I know like what the gist of the Queen's Blood side quest is, but it's not unlike, I mean, I think, you know, we can say pretty definitively every piece of side content has a purpose in this game, and it's not just side content for side content's sake. Like, I think maybe not most, I think like when you think of like a Ubisoft open world, you think of like, you know, maybe a solid 20 hours with you know, another 40 hours of not so solid content making up the meat of those bones, right? And I think this is an instance where it's like, no, you know, every single piece of content, I don't think there was a single piece of content, even the stuff that I wasn't a huge fan of, which we'll get to it, because there were definitely some pain points with, especially the Proto Relic side quest. There were definitely some pain points there, but like every piece of content had a purpose, and it was all in service to something, even if it's not necessarily the main quest, right? It's not all pointing towards the main quest. In fact, most of it is pointing towards Chadley, which is really funny, because that guy continues to be way more important than he has any right to be.
Yeah. And then like sometimes he'll just pop up in a side mission and it's like
Yeah.
you were listening in. Like
Yeah.
you're just not expecting it
Yeah,
sometimes. It's like
he's kind of always there, yeah.
yeah, and the thing is it's like I will say, like, speaking of Chandler, he's the one that gives the incentive to explore, right? He
Yeah.
wants you to explore the world, the biomes, and honestly, like, the grasslands was a really great starting point. I mean, it was really beautiful, and
Yeah.
honestly, it's like this whole area is massive, but the way they designed it, like, you're always constantly walking into something unique,
Yeah.
and I know my first time I like toured the whole biome
Yeah.
before the things popped, like, before you can actually do all the Chadley side stuff
Oh, yeah.
in the area. So I probably wasted a good 5 hours doing that. But I'm like, oh, what
Hey.
does this do? What I mean, I'm trying to figure it out.
Well,
I'm like, I keep
and
seeing these satellites.
yeah. Well, and to the game's credit as well,
Mm-hmm.
they managed to take. I was worried when I heard that Rebirth was going to have more like open zone areas. I was
Mm-hmm.
worried that like Remake's controls wouldn't lend themselves to that because
Mm-hmm.
Remake is a hallway, right? Like
Yep.
and it's not a bad hallway. It's actually quite a good hallway, but it's a hallway. So
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of like freedom and there's not a lot of like
Right.
choices and stuff like that. They did a really solid job of making the terrain very traversable. Um, and like I did not hate running around in this open world, and I was worried that I would. Also, I want to shout out the fact that they did a rendition of Remake's
Oh
theme
yes, I almost
song
forgot.
in a section of the open world
Where
that
you can
if
completely miss it.
you can completely miss it. It's a fantastic track. It's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
It has a battle theme. It's like there is so much. I mean, this is another point about the game as a whole. There's so much missable content
Mm-hmm.
that is like grade A in any other game. The game would force you to see this content, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what makes this game special to me. Is there's so much and it's all so good. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
like okay, I because even a game like I would say like a game like Spider-Man 2018, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some stuff in that game I think you and I can admit that's like all right, this is filler.
Yeah.
This is not and you and I love that game. So
Mm-hmm.
like for for this game, I have a really hard time selecting any bit of content that feels like it's just filler, right? If
Mm-hmm.
anything, there's almost too much there's almost too much non-filler content in this game. It's
Yeah.
almost like an overload on non-filler content. So yeah. What else? What
Well,
else is?
especially with the game, how it rewards you later, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, we'll talk about that later, but more of just like you have to start from the beginning in order to get that those type of rewards.
Yeah.
And I they played around with that in the last one, um,
Kinda.
kind of not fully, but they kind of did. And I knew that going into this game that I would run into a similar situation. um,
Yeah.
So I was very much prepared. I'm not going to leave a stone unturned on this game. So, but yes, I agree. It is crazy how much you can miss and how
Yeah.
much it can, like, it can change your perspective on the game throughout. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
it's not that
just a
it's
lot.
required, but it it flows better.
Yeah.
I guess this would be my point.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Well, and it makes for a more enjoyable experience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. I think the last important thing that happens in chapter one, is the Midgar Stormer fight, um, which I think is it's interesting because in the original, it's it's kind of a mandatory fight, but I don't remember exactly how it goes.
Which
Uh,
one are we talking about?
the big snake that you have to
Oh, yeah,
fight at
yeah.
the end of chapter one.
I
Um,
would say it's required. I mean,
yeah,
they kind of block off all the ways for you to
yeah,
inevitably waltz into it, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. No, I agree with that. But in but in the original, Sephiroth hasn't shown up yet. The party hasn't met Sephiroth yet at this
Mm-hmm.
point. We just have Cloud's rendition of like, oh, this is what happened in Nibelheim, and somehow he's still
Mm-hmm.
around. Um, and so the fight with Midgar Stormer is supposed to be an example, like, oh, look at how powerful Sephiroth is, because he
Mm-hmm.
just like impales it on a tree. Um,
Yeah.
and he does that. He does that in um, he does that in Rebirth, but we actually see him do it in Rebirth. We see him, he kind of like shows up and does a thing, and it's very confusing, and it's like, how is he here? And it's it's almost like Kingdom Hearts esque because Cloud is in the
Mm-hmm.
water, and uh,
It is
uh,
almost.
it. I will say, Rebirth does not beat the Nomura allegations. It doesn't.
No.
For you and I, that's a positive because we like it when
Yeah.
Nomura cooks. But for other people, that might not be that might not be their cup of tea. Um, but in any case, that's a pretty small example of
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things happening. Yeah, I think the Midgar Stormer fight's cool because it's like it's kind of a skill check. Like, will
Mm-hmm.
you be able to handle what's coming? And it's a lot easier if you do side content,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have to do the side content if you don't want to. You just have to be prepared for a harder fight. Um,
Yeah.
I'm super interested in what a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth speed run looks like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not a super, like, it's a fairly long game by itself, but like skipping cutscenes and stuff, you chop off probably a good like 20 hours or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
then you add on skipping side content. It's like, okay, I wonder, but then, like, okay, is there side content that you want to do to make it go faster? Yeah, that's just an
Yeah.
interesting hypothetical. So
No,
that
it's definitely a thought
ends.
I've thought about throughout the game.
Yeah.
Like it, I'm like, what would happen if I just skipped all this? I'm probably going to have a much harder experience, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
And I ended up being right,
Yeah,
but I
for
didn't
sure.
skip it.
Well, and the final boss rush is pretty hard anyways.
Mhm.
So do you have anything else you want to say about chapter 2 before we move on?
No, I think we about covered it. I
Okay.
think, yeah, it's a great start within this point.
So yeah, chapter 2 really sets the tone quite nicely for the rest of Rebirth for sure. Um, so moving on to chapter 3, deeper into darkness. Not a whole lot going on
Mm.
here. We have our first fight with the Turks, um, Rude and Elena. Um, that's a fun fight. We have our first section where the party gets split up
Mm.
because Red 13 and Barrett kind of fall down and go on their own way, and Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith stay topside. I actually just finished
Mhm.
this chapter on hard mode today, so it's
Mhm.
kind of fresh in my memory.
Oh,
We
okay.
get like a lot of banter between the party, but not a whole lot else. It's
Mhm.
still a good chapter, but it's not like
It's
super
very much,
full of everything.
and honestly, it reminds me of one of the chapters that was in remake.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I think I can't remember what chapter it would be. I think I want to say it's somewhere around. Yeah, I don't know, but it's. I
Yeah.
think I want to say it's 12. I want to say it's 12.
I'm
Chapter 12.
thinking I'm thinking chapter
But
15 when they're like it's like right after they get like the grapple guns or whatever and they're climbing
okay,
up. I'm thinking like
okay.
that cuz that was not in the original. That section
Yeah.
was completely like added on and that felt like
Uh.
padding.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first. Like, this is like really. I think the only chapter. I think it's its weakest chapter. I do think it
Really?
is. Like
Hmm.
it. Um. Okay. Now you're making me second guess. Let me take a look here again, just as a brief moment. Um. Yeah, I do think it is the weakest chapter, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just there's not much to go on off of this. I mean, it's cool
Yeah.
to. I think we get introduced to Lena, and I think that was a cool introduction for her, and brings a new dynamic to the Turks. But
Yeah.
besides that, I mean, yeah, it also introduces Barrett's storyline, you
Yeah.
know, of him in the mines. But even then, that's not really explored at all. Other than it's kind of just a throwaway line that, hey, I know this area. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, and
This
yeah,
type
you're
of
supposed
area.
to. It's kind of setting the tone for like Barrett kind of having a star role in this game in a way that, um,
Hmm.
I mean, I think he's probably not getting the same kind of attention in part three. Um, that's that's my maybe I'm wrong though. I mean,
Hmm.
I'd be glad to be wrong, but he's definitely like kind of the star of the show in uh in a large part of Rebirth. So,
Hmm.
and this is kind of the introduction to that because in the original, there's no Turks fight. You don't fight them in the original.
Hmm.
They just kind of meet and you go their separate ways, and then everybody fights the stone golem. So,
Hmm.
it's very much like, okay, we're gonna set the tone. We're gonna change a few things just to give Barrett a little bit of
Hmm.
maybe not like an introduction, but you're kind of setting the stage a little bit. Um, yeah, and then so moving on to chapter 4, we have Dawn of a New Era, which is the Junon section of the game.
Hmm.
Uh, and this, I have to say, I think of all of the open world areas, Junon is the one that like sticks out the least in my memory.
Hmm.
like it's not my least favorite,
Yeah.
but it's the one that like it feels so much like a like just an extension of the grasslands, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
No, I would agree with that. I mean, even the story beat, like the story segment of chapter 4, you're not really, you kind of just skip past Junon. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, um, at least the explorable part. The I think Junon has a lot of cool spots. Like, I think the whole shipwreck area is really cool.
yeah,
Other than that, there's not really much to talk about. Like talk. I guess it's not the way to say it, but like not really much to note
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Because it's, and this is where, you know this is where I think this is the side content. There's not really much either, other than you get. So as far as the proto relic sections go, there's a
Oh
different,
yeah,
pretty much a different mini game for each area, right?
yeah,
So I mean, they bring back Fort Condor in
yeah.
this.
This was the big pain point for me.
Yeah,
This was my least favorite Pro Relic quest chain, I think.
really.
Yeah,
I'm surprised by that. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm also surprised because
yeah,
I'm not a big Fort Condor fan. I'll admit to that.
yeah.
Um, I didn't mind it in Integrate. Like, I thought it was okay. Um, I'll let you know what my biggest proto relic
No, that's
pain points
I
was, but
guess yeah, there's one other that I kind of also disliked, but yeah, we'll get to that.
yeah, we'll get to it. But there's really strong ones and then there's really weak ones. This is definitely
Yeah.
one of the weakest ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Unless you're like, you loved Integrate's Fort Condor segment, but even then
Yeah.
it's a little different. It is a little
It
different.
is a little different, and it is cool to have Fort Condor because it was a mini game in the original.
Oh,
So
I didn't know
like,
that.
yeah, it was a little different in the original. It wasn't as like I didn't play a whole lot of it, so I wouldn't be able to tell you a whole lot about it.
Mm.
But yeah, like it's cool to have Fort Condor back. The Proto Relic is cool. It's a cool part. It's just like I'm not a big fan of Fort Condor as a mini game, so it's like okay, I don't want to I don't want to be here. Is
Mm-hmm.
basically how I felt. But it is what it is. It was still like it was still fun from like a narrative perspective because you get the whole like teasing, about the captain and what's going on there,
Mm.
and interesting thing about I have something interesting to say towards the end of the Proto Relic quest, but we'll save that
Mm-hmm.
for when we actually get there. Um, yeah, not a whole lot to say from an open world perspective, but from a narrative perspective, a lot happens in Junon.
Mm-hmm.
We get to we this is the first time we meet Yuffie in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we meet, and Yuffie has a pretty great introduction, all things considered. I think
Mm-hmm.
she has one of my favorite. I just think Susie Young as Yuffie is just chef's kiss. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody does a great job. I think her specifically is just so great, pretty
Mm-hmm.
consistently. Um, yeah. And then we get to Upper Junon,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we get the whole marching section, and
Mm-hmm.
Cloud infiltrating the ranks and becoming a captain. Um, we get the whole like bald, the
Oh,
the
the bald quartet.
yeah, or
Or
whatever, whatever
yeah.
whatever it's called, the bar where it's exclusively the bald guys. Um, we get our
Yeah. That was something to stumble upon.
that was so like
To put in
random.
perspective, this is a really funny story. To put in perspective, my fiance um had not seen a single bit of any bit of Final Fantasy, okay? And
Yeah,
so she sat down to watch this section with me, right?
yeah.
And then the bald, you stumble in and it's the whole bald-headed segment. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I don't know how to explain this. I'm like, and I was just like, this is part of the charm.
This
You know
is
what I mean?
this is peak Final Fantasy right here.
Oh yeah, it's
That's
totally
like,
peak. So
yeah.
I'm having the greatest time of my life, but out of context, I could definitely see like, what is this game?
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, that whole segment was incredibly humorous.
Oh
Probably
yeah.
some of the most lighthearted stuff in the game. I guess aside from what comes immediately after.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get the assassination attempt on Rufus by Yuffie. And then we also get like the fight with Roche as well, which was kind of forgettable to me. I guess just because Roche is kind of forgettable as a character. I mean, they do some interesting stuff with him as a figure, but not as a character, if that makes any sense. Later on in the
They
game.
they were trying really, really hard
They
to
were.
make you um, get excited for Roche, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they really tried to do that with previous game, and then especially with this one.
Yeah.
They wanted you to get attached, but I think they were trying too hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and Roche
and
is just, he's a little too big in a game with already pretty big personalities, I guess.
I would agree with that. Like
Yeah.
it's there's I think he has a later fight that I think is much stronger
Yeah.
than this one. Like I think, like you said, it's very forgettable,
Yeah.
and he's really easy to defeat.
Yeah.
I
This
think
fight is pretty
so.
easy, all things considered. The later
Mm-hmm,
fight is much more. It took me a few tries, if I recall. Um, I
mm-hmm.
could be I could be wrong because item spam is definitely a thing in this game.
Just
Yeah,
waiting for that ATB to fully go up.
indeed, indeed. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to add about chapter 4? Because then the gang kind of gets on a boat and we get into chapter 5.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah,
Um, oh, I think I think that was a great way to show Rufus's intentions
yeah,
because we didn't really get much of him in the previous one,
yeah,
and I think that really set the tone of, hey, this is a wild card. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And he's much different than the intentions of who he's governing and his previous regime, his father. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Father's
I
intentions, which
wanna
I think was really smart to do.
I wanna also I wanna uh, speaking of Rufus Shinra, I want to point out Glenn Lodbrok, as voiced by Ben Diskin. um, you know who I'm talking about, right?
I can't remember who that was. I know Ben
He's
Diskin, but I can't.
he's the guy in the cloak who turns out to be a Sephiroth clone at the end of the game.
Oh wait! That was Ben Diskin the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't believe I didn't pick up on that.
So I picked up on
I
it.
saw him in the credits.
Oh, and you were like, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
No, so I clocked that it was Ben Diskin really fast, just because I can recognize voice actors relatively easily. Tyler Hoechlin as Sephiroth, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. But I clocked that it was Ben Diskin really fast, and I got really scared because he was in a dark cloak, and I was like, "There's no way this guy is young Xehanort in disguise. There's no way." Thankfully, he wasn't. Right. He was just a Sephiroth clone. But like, still, I was like, "What is happening?" Yeah, so that was just funny.
Now I gotta rewatch those cutscenes.
Yeah, no, it was definitely like, oh, he got typecast a little bit here. Yeah, so chapter 5, Blood in the Water, has one of my favorite sequences in the game with Red 13 in the Queen's Blood tournament. That was just also chef's kiss, just some perfect, like, he's in the Shinra outfit, he's doing the Michael Jackson stuff, like, I couldn't have asked for any better. But then we also get our first Jenova fight. I think it's 2. I think there are 2 Jenova fights in the game. Am I wrong? Is there a third? Okay.
No, it's 2. There was one in remake, but there wasn't. There was just this one and the one later. So
and the final boss rush. Yeah. I don't know. Do you other than that, there's not a whole lot to say. We get more of like Cloud thinking Tifa's supposed to be dead, but other than that,
I will say this chapter is made for, if you love Queen's Blood, you're gonna love it. Because it's totally a Queen's Blood chapter. That's all it is. Like,
that's the whole point.
If you don't, you can also skip it.
Yeah,
I believe, which is like, you could full on skip it. Yeah, which is such a great idea. I mean, that's another thing for, like, talking about as far as speedruns go. Like, you can full on skip that portion, beat the portion in chapter 5 probably in 30 minutes.
Oh yeah,
less than that probably.
Probably less if you're skipping cutscenes, and if you have like a built-in strategy for Jenova. Yeah, there's no way it takes a super long time.
I think that's there's not really much to say, but this is where, like, the fun, like, I think this is where the fun side content really comes into play. Like, it's like I can distract myself and play this for hours and not like I feel like I'm playing a whole other game of just like casual playing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and speaking of casual, kind of lighthearted adventure, chapter 6 is where we get to Costa del Sol, and we kind of have our beach episode for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We get, I don't know, like, this was definitely like a moment for me where I was a little bit like, okay, time to get the ball rolling again, game. Just because chapter 5 was already so lighthearted, so I was like, oh, we're doing even more sort of fun times at the beach. It was still fun. And we got some cool stuff. This, I think, was the first time Zach reappeared in the story. I could be...
Yeah, he kind of just pops up. I can't tell you when
remember.
which chapter he pops up where, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would say he starts popping up here. I think this is when he starts to like, I don't know.
Yeah. In any case,
kind of just
yeah
looks for Biggs.
yeah. I think that's kind of the main thing that happens. From a story perspective, there's not a whole lot that happens in Costa del Sol. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
Well, I will say I love this chapter. I really did. Just having a blast of a time, doing all kinds of mini games, and
that's true. There were a lot of mini games,
and just kind of just really just starting to interact with these characters in a way that, let's forget the whole world a little bit and just have fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I loved a little bit in the chapter 9 portion of remake was that, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
But this one in a bigger context of really they just have fun. And I spent a large portion of this game in Costa del Sol. Yeah. Probably, I would say, I think it was close to 10 hours. I know that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun with it. Because, there's some explorable regions too before you get to chapter 7.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's definitely like they block off a good portion of the Corel region before
which was stressing me out because there was a side quest that, you can't do until later. Because you can't cross the river. And that's to defeat the Tomberry. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I can continue, like if I should continue or just keep trying to find a way over, because I made the mistake one time in remake and I missed that side quest. I got all the side quests done in remake the first playthrough, but the one. And that made me a little salty.
But yeah. Well, and it's fun to just kind of... It's funny because there's Costa del Sol, which feels like a minigame hub, but then later on you get to the real minigame hub.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely like... It's like a teaser almost. What was the... Oh, wait, no, never mind. We'll get to that later. So with that, I think we can move on to chapter 7. And this is where Barrett really starts to take over. We get... Yuffie joins the party in chapter 6.
Officially. In chapter 6,
she joins right at the end. There's like a little like Hojo. It feels very like beach episode where it's like, oh, there's like a random Hojo appearance, and then the robots try to steal everybody, and then Yuffie comes in and saves the day, and so like Yuffie joins the party. She's probably, I want to say she's probably my favorite character to play as in the game. I really like she has innate type coverage, so you don't have to worry about materia when you're
Oh yeah,
playing as her. I like her combos a lot, and I like her method of getting into the air. As opposed to, I don't know. I just really like playing as Yuffie. I guess I just enjoy the ninja play style. Yeah. So.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, um, yeah. I mean, chapter 7 is it's a pretty good segment as far as like you get to play as Yuffie a little bit, like,
Yeah.
and you know, I think I think this section of the game is a little bit better level design than I say what chapter 3 was.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because
I
this is
really
where you get
liked
the
it.
grapple hook, right?
Right? Yeah. Which I think was pretty cool. I wish they kind of utilized it a little bit more,
Yeah.
but um, yeah. I mean, I don't know. What's your kind of thoughts on chapter 7?
Yeah, I enjoyed chapter 7. I think it definitely was like, okay, this is another kind of remake-ish portion of the game for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I enjoyed it, and we get a little bit more of Barrett, which is always nice. And we get a little bit more exposition on the world, and it's just, I just think it's a decent. I think it's a decent time. Um, this is also where we meet Barrett's hometown,
Yes.
and we learn. I don't know if we exactly learn it here, but we get a little bit of like, okay, Barrett's ostracized from this community, um, and he's like, oh, it's because I voted for Shinra to come to the town, and then look at what happened.
I think that's
Yeah,
really a really cool perspective of Barrett too.
yeah,
Like that I didn't know before. Like it makes his character much more like I think it makes him much more dynamic of just like yeah, he is quite literally the opposite of what he was before Shinra came in. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And that point is a turning point for him of why he believes the way he does. I think it's really cool.
yeah, yeah. Barrett is one of the most dynamic characters I think in the game, and I think that's part of that is just his backstory hits really hard. Yeah, and that leads pretty directly into chapter 8, and that's where we get the gold saucer. And you want to talk about mini games?
Yeah.
The gold saucer has a lot of them. You don't even get to play all of them the first time you go to the gold saucer. You only get access to a few of them. And
Yeah.
so you go to the gold saucer for a little bit, and then and then Barrett ends up getting framed for a bunch of murders, and everybody's like, Barrett wouldn't do that though. And then you kind of go into the underground, and then this is kind of this was also a bit remakey in my opinion, where it felt I don't remember if Gus is in the original, but he like captures your friends, and then you have to do a chocobo race. Uh, chocobo racing, awesome in this game. Basically, just Mario
Hmm.
Kart.
Pretty
Um,
much.
Pretty cool. It's another example of just like you have to wonder like what went into the development of this game, just because so much of it is just
Hmm.
like mini game after mini game after mini game, and every mini game is like fully fleshed out. It's not just like one
Right.
little mini game. It's like the chocobo races. There's like a whole like mini, like I would pay $20 for just that
Hmm.
chocobo racing stuff. Like I would be willing to pay that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, the gold saucer portion of this game, at least this first portion, not necessarily second portion for me. First portion, it was the point in which I was very much like, it's kind of the same. This is the point in which I got to, um, with when you what you had in Costa del Sol. I was very much
sure,
like, okay, the fun times kind of just not working for me anymore.
sure.
You know what I mean?
I
Like,
guess like
I w-
the difference for me is like they had the like really fun introduction to the gold saucer where like Yuffie and
mhm.
Tifa and Aerith are like dancing, and you get
Yeah,
Andreas and stuff like that, and it's like that's the stuff that like I really enjoy. So I think
yeah,
there was like a switcheroo there where it was like, okay, we're getting different itches scratched here a little bit.
yeah. Um, I think I think I mean, they bring back the Coliseum, they do all this stuff, but I think the gold saucer, and this might be a little bit of a controversial take. Um, I think Wall Market is a much more intriguing environment,
Oh,
like
that's fair.
than what the gold saucer is, and they're very similar, not in like not in the type of what they are, but more of what they kind of resemble.
Represent. Yeah.
Yeah, represent to the game, and it's like, okay, so this is going to be, they're going to try to, one up wall market. Like, this is going to be
Yeah.
their time to do that. And I very much was like, in this in this portion, like, you talked about the whole Andrea and everything. I was like, okay, all right, I'm in. And then I think I got disappointed a little bit that it was just mini games.
Sure.
You know what I
No,
mean?
that's fair.
Like,
That's fair.
there there wasn't much as far as story wise things going into it until
Yeah.
you get to the underground and you have to do a chocobo race that way. Um,
Yeah.
but the and I'll talk about the later section when you go back to the Golden Saucer. I thought that was much better,
Yeah.
much better.
That makes
Um,
sense.
so yeah, I mean, as far as the whole like Barrett and I forget his friend's name,
Dine.
but Barrett and Dime having that was a very cool and very unique boss fight.
Excellent.
Like it's so different, and it was completely designed just for Barrett alone, and I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, this is a whole different type of gameplay that I gotta adapt to,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and what's cool is it was like that in the original. They made it Barrett versus Dine. It was still
uh,
the original's like turn based combat and stuff, so it wasn't like as unique, but it was still like I thought it was really cool that they were still willing to be like, okay, we're gonna make it just Baron and Dine. And then we also get the car chase segment and the boss fight after
Yeah.
that. I thought that was a little weaker.
That was weaker. I agree. Just because you're just running in a circle,
Yeah.
rolling in a circle.
Yeah. But overall, there was some just genuinely excellent character stuff, and
Yeah.
and the boss fight with Dine is awesome, and then the way Dine goes out is awesome. And then you have Dio and Rude throwing down. It's just all great stuff. And then the rest of the Corel region opens up to you, basically.
Yep.
Kate Sith also joins the party somewhere in here.
Yep.
It kind of happens out of nowhere. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think they get trapped and that's what kind of puts them in the party.
Yeah.
But the Corel region, like, I thought was really cool. But it also, environment-wise, it didn't have much to look at as far as the desert goes.
Yeah.
I think. So it is a little bit more of, in my opinion, a little bit more of a weaker region than what we've got. But if you look at it as a whole, and if you include and it quite literally is included, the Costa del Sol area, I think it bumps it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. To me, it's like Corel would be a lot weaker if it weren't for the fact that both the Gold Saucer and Costa del Sol were part of the Corel region.
Exactly.
I will say it was weird that they locked off part of the proto-relic chain.
That was very weird.
To later. I guess they just wanted to have a reason to go back. I'm not sure.
I will say it is my least this is my least favorite proto-relic section.
That's fair. I dislike this mini game too. I guess it's just worst, yeah.
To me, it was the worst mini game in the game, and I was just like, they put the point system so high too, so I would get it on the second try, you know what I mean? But sometimes it's just like there's a challenge here, but I don't even want to play this game. I'm more interested in just completing the whole full circle of getting all the proto relics, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this one to me was the weakest.
Yeah. But it's still, we still get some more exposition on what's going on. There's like some alternate dimension stuff that's happening, but we don't quite know what's going on yet. And that brings us to chapter 9, which takes place in the Gongaga region. Which I don't know if you agree with this, but this is my least favorite region in the game. Just purely because exploring it is an absolute pain. And it's just like a maze in a game that doesn't do super well with mazes, I guess is the best way I could put it.
It is the weaker, I will say it is the weakest region, I think. For two reasons. One, the maze, like you said, but also it has the worst track in the whole entire game. I think.
Do. You didn't like that?
Yeah, no. Not on repeat for 10 hours. Because, I explored the whole area. I will say exploration in certain parts of Gungaga was a little bit cool to see. Like
Yeah.
I really did. I liked I opposite to Corel. I really loved the proto relics
Yeah, the
in
proto
this
relic
region.
chain in this region was pretty awesome.
I think this is my second favorite proto relics was in this region, and
Okay.
uh, you know the as far as and it's nice because it's just standard. Like it's not even really much of a mini game. It's just more of you're just fighting enemies,
Yeah.
and it makes it so much more enjoyable. I think a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but I spent a large portion in this region, and just hearing that on repeat, repeat, repeat. No, it wasn't working for me. I was just like, I'm like, I need to get out of this region as soon as possible. But I got everything done. But it still was not. It it was rough.
I hear you. Yeah. Um, we get, as far as story is concerned, we get the first time Cloud remembers Zack.
Mm-hmm.
We get, and we also meet Zack's parents, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn a little bit about Aerith and Zack's relationship, at least from Aerith's perspective.
Do you know anything about Cisne
No, I know that she was
prior
in
to this
Crisis
game?
Core.
Okay.
I know that, but I found that out like from social media. I didn't know that
Gotcha.
going in. I guess
Well,
I should say I like hyper binged this game. I put
uh-huh.
like Caleb knows. Like I put like
Yeah, you got it done pretty quickly.
I put a large amount of time. I struggle to say like how much exactly, but I put at least 60 hours into the first weekend of this game, which is quite a lot of time. So I
And
didn't
I
have
put
like
I did close to 30, but that's
yeah.
insane.
Well, and it was like for me it was like I was just like dedicated, partly just because I didn't want to get spoiled.
Yeah.
But I there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me to be like going on social media and being like, okay, what are people
Mm-hmm.
thinking of this game? Just because I was like,
Right.
I woke up and went to bed, and between those times I was playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so there wasn't a lot of like extra game. There wasn't a lot of like time spent outside of the game. um, so a character like Cisne, it was like, oh, I wonder who this is because she's picking up on some stuff, and so I found out
Mm-hmm.
later, oh, she's from Crisis Core.
I mean, she, she was a standout character in Crisis Core. I mean, she played an interesting perspective
Yeah,
as far as like she was one of the Turks, but she also knew that sometimes following orders wasn't the best route,
yeah,
and you know they they it, she was such a cool and intriguing character, and then like there's not really a context as to where she goes or what happens to her.
sure,
Um, so seeing her pop up was really cool.
yeah,
Um, I guess this I didn't get really spoiled on anything in the game, but I kind of, which is awesome. But the
yeah.
I did kind of hear, I think leading up to the game, that this name was going to be in it in
Oh,
some
sure,
capacity. Like there was some like character art or whatever that popped up, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Oh, that's cool." I wish I didn't know that, but that's cool.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like
getcha.
because that would have been a real big surprise to me to see her show up. But like when I got really excited going into Gagaga, and like, because I knew that we would be like tying back to Zach, and like it was like hearing his theme and all that stuff play
Yeah.
when the moment you like walk into it and get rid of that god awful theme for a brief few minutes, like that was like it that was a moment. I was just
Yeah.
like, yes. Um, but uh, is this the yeah? As far as the story section goes in chapter 9, I really like chapter 9.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I really love chapter 9, especially at the end when you're going through the reactor and the whole, Cloud like getting like his brain turned off or whatever,
Yeah.
completely taken over, and you know
He
him
goes for
turning on
Tifa.
Tifa,
Yeah.
like that shocked me, and I was that one caught me off guard. I was like, "What just happened?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And yeah, there's there's precedent for stuff like that in the original, but I will still maintain Tifa Tifa like falls in the original, but I don't remember it being Cloud's fault in the original. Whereas like in this, it's like clearly Cloud's fault,
Oh yeah.
or at least like Cloud's body's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we get probably one of the more striking sort of visual moments in the game where Tifa's inside of the weapon, and you
Mm-hmm.
find out that there are sort of like two factions of the Whispers from Remake.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's on Sephiroth's side, the other is on the planet side. Um, yeah, it's just a really cool segment. We also get the fight with oh, what's her name? The she's in the big robot.
Oh, Scarlet.
Scarlet,
Scarlet.
yeah. We get the fight with her. Um, it's just a really great chapter in terms of just the fights and the set pieces. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was also fun to have like the boys section and the girls section. That was also fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a really solid chapter overall, right? Like Gongaga as a region isn't super great, but if you can get past that, there's at least the high, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a pretty high point in this region. Yeah, do you have anything else you want to say about chapter 9 before we move on?
Nope, that's it. I
All
think
right.
that's about covers it.
So the next thing that happens, we get introduced to Sid Highwind.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and it's fun to just kind of have him show up. He flies you to the Cosmo Canyon region, which is huge. Cosmo Canyon is unnecessarily big. The grasslands in Junon and Corel are all big, but like Cosmo Canyon feels like the biggest flex, I guess, is the best
Oh,
way to put it.
100%.
And so you go through. It also has a really cool chocobo mechanic where you glide.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my favorite chocobo mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
That comes a little later, but and then we get to Cosmo Canyon, which is where Red 13 sort of takes the spotlight, or as he is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be called, Nanaki. And we
Mm-hmm.
learn. I actually completely forgot about all of this. I knew that I remembered like some of the overarching plot stuff, but I forgot like, oh, he's not as old as he. I forgot about stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So it was when the voice change happened, I was like, huh? Wait, what is this?
Yeah. I was
Uh,
very sad about the voice change. As cool as it was, I was like, no, moon
no.
is no longer shining down.
I mean, it wasn't. It was never Kirk Thornton, but yeah.
Oh, it's not? I thought it
No.
was.
Nope.
Okay, now you're making me guess. Are
Nope.
you sure?
Nope. It was Max Middleman the whole time.
What? I thought for sure it was Kirk Thornton.
Nope. It was at least never Kirk Thornton in remake. Uh, but it was definitely Max Middleman the whole time in Rebirth.
Wow.
Yeah, he's just that good.
He is just that good. I kept thinking it was. Okay, I guess I was wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all. I retract my statement.
um, but yeah, we learn a lot about Red 13 or Nanaki. We learn a lot about his dad and the Gi, and it's all stuff that was like kind of in the original, but they really fleshed it out here. Um, because basically the Gi are like this tribe of people who were like, I guess they're like aliens? Question mark.
Yeah, I would say so.
Um,
Um,
and then they're kind of like hostile to life on the planet, and so the planet dislikes them, and so they can't return to the planet. Um, and so when they die, they don't really die. It's kind of weird. um,
yeah.
we get a really cool moment with Nanaki and his dad, where the statue is crying because Nanaki is acknowledging his dad's heroism. Yeah, I would say this is definitely one of the sections of the game that I'm like, yeah, that was in the game, and it was good. Um,
Well,
but I don't have a lot to
I've,
say on it.
for me, it was my favorite region.
Oh wow,
Like
okay.
you said, they really flexed here. Um, it was just a lot of fun. Like um, the like the traversal system was, you know, the the flying the chocobos were as far as it controls wise was a little weird,
Yeah.
but the like the side quests and like all that was, I think I really loved every moment of it. Um, and I thought that the way the map is designed was really cool too. Like just the way you go in certain areas and you can only go out certain areas was really cool.
Huh.
But much less so of a maze than Gungaga was. Um, and I thought the level design with the whole gi portion was actually, I thought that was a pretty cool level design. Um, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as you went deeper and deeper, I was like, man, this feels like a whole other game, but it's also like it's really cool. Like I just love the aesthetic of it. And and little brief known fact, um, Ezra and I went to a concert
Oh yeah.
in September of last year, right? And you know how I haven't played the original, right? So
Yep.
the a lot of the concert was different Final Fantasy themes and all that stuff from each games, and they pretty much all the 7 tracks I already knew, right?
Yeah.
Except I didn't know the Cosmo Canyon theme,
Ah.
and when they did it, I felt like that was like my first tease into Rebirth, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what it's going to be. So it felt like an exclusive like song, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Even though it totally wasn't, but in my mind it was. So
that's cool.
when we did get to this, I was like, I was just reliving that moment. I'm like, yes,
Yeah,
this is pretty cool, and
that is
it is
pretty
a
cool.
really good theme. I do love the theme of the Cosmo Canyon. So,
Yeah, it is a great theme. I will give it
um,
that.
Proto Relic. This is my favorite Proto Relic region.
Fair, fair.
Um, uh, and not much less so on the mini game portion, but the story portion,
Yeah, the
side
story
story
portion is
portion of
great.
that is really good. And it was a really nice check in of just like going back to the times with Avalanche, and that was
Yeah,
a really well done
great stuff.
pro relic section. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty much my thoughts on 10.
yeah. Just want to make sure I don't completely miss everything here. Um, I think, yeah, so moving on to chapter 11, this is where we get to the Nebel region. And this is probably my favorite region just
Mm-hmm.
because I really like the chocobo, the Super Mario Sunshine chocobo mechanic. Um,
It
uh,
is really good.
yeah,
I those are my favorite chocobos too. I agree
yeah.
with you on that.
Um, and I just think like I think it has a lot going for it. Like the Proto Relic quest chain is really cool because it has Sephiroth in it. And it's the first time we actually fight Gilgamesh. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the yeah yeah
yeah,
in the island.
yeah. It's just a cool. It's probably my favorite Proto Relic quest chain for that reason. Um,
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a good one.
yeah,
My thing of it being the weakest. I mean, not the weakest. The weak point in it is just having to wait for them to move. And yes, you could push
that's
them,
fair. That's
but
fair.
it wasn't doing much. It wasn't doing much, to be
No, that's
honest.
that's fair. I guess
And
it's just like for me, it's like I'd rather a relatively painless
yeah,
kind of experience where I'm just like kind of bored rather than being actively infuriated. But that's
yeah.
different
Well,
for
that's a fair
everybody.
point. I mean, that's why I talked about in the Gungaga region. It was nice to just fight. You know what
Yeah.
I mean, and not like have to deal with a new mini game mechanic.
Yeah.
Um, in which I think most of them did not quite work. Specifically, the Cactuar ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one was pretty painful.
never again. I'm not looking forward to my platinum run of that for that portion.
Yeah, that's not
That's
going to
going
be
to be the
very
hardest
fun.
trophy for me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Hard mode gets pretty hard.
Well, I mean,
Having only done 3.
hardest mentally to get through. Like
Sure. Sure.
like there's going to be like a lot of preparation to go into it, and a lot of patience that I probably
Yeah.
won't have.
Yeah.
um,
Man.
but
Man, the platinum. I have decided I'm not getting the platinum for this game. I'm not. I'm not making myself do it. Just
I'm taking some time before I do
yeah.
that.
I
you
think you're
know,
probably. I think the way you platinum this game is by doing it in like very short bursts of
yeah,
like 1 hour every like 2 months or something like that.
yeah.
Right, like really just like making sure you don't burn yourself out.
Hmm.
Because I would like to do other playthroughs of this game at some point. So
Yeah.
um yeah, so where was I? Oh, so yeah, the Nemo region's cool as as an
Hmm.
explorable region. From a story perspective, we go back up the reactor.
Hmm.
Uh, oh, I guess we find out like, oh, Nibelheim is still there even though it got burned down.
Right.
Um, and then we go back up the reactor. We get more stuff with Cloud and Zack. We get the declaration of war between Wutai and Shinra.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what else happens. Oh, the Shinra Manor section happens here. This is probably my least favorite part of the game. Because, for one thing, I don't really like playing as Cait Sith. And I also...
Oh, yes! Oh, I forgot. I tried to block that.
And also... I also... the Vincent Valentine fight really kicked my teeth in. So, yeah, I got kind of cooked. But
well, no, what kicks my teeth in was the Cait Sith section. Like,
yeah.
I guess I didn't know how to work Cait Sith. I guess that's the point. Problem, because when you get to like later enemies and stuff, especially when they get reflective, I'm like, I don't know how to use Cait Sith to counteract, I mean, some of the stuff. Like, he's throwing like certain magic attacks, like and yet they're impervious to that, and I'm like, oh god. And every time I do it, like, I get reflected back at me. It was not fun.
Yeah, no.
And then there was two of them, and it was just like, oh my gosh.
Shinra Manor is probably my least favorite part of the game by a long shot. Because not only is it incredibly reminiscent of Remake in like the weakest parts of that game, but it's also like my least favorite character to play as is also there. So it's like, oh no, it just was kind of set up to fail for me. So yeah, we meet Vincent. We do meet Vincent Valentine, which is cool. He and Sid will definitely be playable in Part 3. What else is there? Anything else? I guess we get like a little bit more of like Cloud Zack stuff, but other than that,
well, you also get the tiny Bronco becomes a boat.
That's next chapter.
Does it?
Yeah, that's like right after the Vincent Valentine fight.
Yeah, it's right after the yeah. There's not really much to say about this chapter other than this is the chapter with Roche, where you have to fight with Roche.
The other Roche fight,
and this one was a much stronger fight. And I really liked it, and this was the point in which the Roche character actually got a little bit more intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Like, when he showed up in chapter 4, I was just like, I kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, okay, all right, we're redoing the magic of Remake, like, I get it. But this one was, I liked where they were going with it.
Yeah, and I like that they kind of frame Roche as like a tragic character in this game.
Right.
Yeah, just genuinely pretty good stuff overall. Like, I don't really like the Shinra Manor section, but I can get over that because the Vincent Valentine fight is really cool, and the Roche fight is also pretty solid. So like there's positives the whole way through. And that brings us to chapter 12, and this is where the game just explodes, basically. It just is like, all right, you thought you were doing everything. You thought you were
done.
Here's not only added side quests to the rest of the game, to the rest of the areas, but also here's the open sea. And I was like, it was at that point that I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna start moving towards the end of the game here.
I think I was the same way. That actually was the point in which I was, because I started to explore the sea, and I was like, because there's that whole pirate treasure map or whatever.
Yeah.
And I did one of them, and like I'm getting my butt whooped, and I'm like, jeez. Like I don't have the energy for this anymore. Like I was
Yeah.
like I just want to get to the end, and
Yeah.
clearly they're meant for additional fights, you know,
Yeah.
post game fights. So I was like, yeah, I finished out like the Corel region as far as the Proto Relic goes, and I know that there's the whole Gilgamesh temple or whatever, a Gilgamesh island that you need to go to in
Yeah.
the scene, but I was not doing that. I was just like, I'll do that after I beat the game. Like that will probably be one of the first things I do, is that section. But I was like, I got the proto relics, I did all that, but I want to beat this game now at
Uh,
this point. And I also at that point, I mean, we're rolling up onto last week, and I'm like, man, we haven't had a podcast. We're You and I are going to be hanging out soon. Like I know we can't keep our trap shut for that long, so I'm like, we
yeah.
got I gotta persevere through. I gotta accept the fact that I'm not going to get everything done. But
Yeah.
I did do all the side quests in this section,
Hey.
and what?
Oh, I was just gonna say I didn't do that. I was like I was too impatient. I was like I'm ready to see how this ends. Um, yeah,
I mean the like for me, a lot of those side quests were very forgettable. Like I can only
sure.
think of two, and they opened up like 6 or 7 side quests,
Yeah,
and and that's unfortunate to me. Like this is where I feel a little like disappointed because like I feel like I'm not disappointed in the game itself, but just disappointed in this aspect. Like
yeah,
every side quest in remake was unique and memorable in my eyes. Like I remember doing specific ones. Like you know, some of them are typical side quests, but
yeah,
the way they interact within the story and the characters that makes up for it. Whereas this one felt like they were making side quests just for the sake of side quests a little
sure.
bit. Um, and but it pays off for in chapter 12 when you go back to the gold saucer portion of what you're going to get as far as this is the unique reward, I would say, of the game. You know what I mean? Of the all the effort that you put in and everything. So
Yeah.
I gotta ask, which segment of the story did you get?
Oh, who was my date?
Yes.
I got Aerith.
Really?
Yeah,
Really, really.
and I was like, I'm definitely more of a Tifa fan, but I
Uh-huh.
was like, you know what, this is appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
I
thing.
was ultimately happy about that.
It's like Tifa and Aerith are on such an equal level for me,
Yeah,
but probably Tifa gets the edge, mostly because of what Crisis Core does with her character, and with Aerith's character, um, in two separate ways. But the thing is like I did get Tifa, and I was very happy
ah,
with the Tifa portion. But I was like, yeah, this is totally the game wants you to do Aerith, but I definitely got Tifa, and I'm okay with that. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Um,
I'm interested to see it, to see the other ones because I haven't watched the
uh,
other ones yet.
I I haven't looked at the trophy list like officially yet, but I can guarantee you there's a trophy in there that you have to get every single one.
Well, they
Because
open
there
up.
was. Go ahead.
They let you choose after you've beaten the game, and you go to chapter
Mm.
select. They'll let you choose. So
Oh, okay.
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
that That I guess it's a little better
Yeah.
considering how massive of a game this is
Yeah.
compared to like Remake, where you had like three different. I That was the whole with the whole dress thing. Like you had
Yeah.
three different dresses to get for each character,
Yeah.
um,
I was
which
not
meant
doing
nine,
that.
which meant 9 playthroughs of it. I did it eventually, like
Yeah.
I mean through different playthroughs, but I was curious if they were going to make you do that again with this one, with that portion. So there might be still
Yeah.
that, but at least it's a little easier to get.
Yeah.
Which the only thing in Remake that made that trophy so tedious was like there was like the whole Chocobo Sam like coin flip and the
Yeah.
certain replies that you do. Oh my god, that
Man.
would wreck certain scenarios. Actually, that wouldn't do that. That wasn't for the dresses. That was for like an end game scene where you have to like
Yeah.
get
Yeah. I
everybody.
don't. Yeah, I don't remember specifically, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I mean that was nonetheless. I really like this section much better of the
Yeah.
Golden Saucer. I think that it made up for it completely. Um, a lot of my fears and concerns were of my initial go around.
Yeah.
I still think Wall Market is a little bit of a better, cooler place, but Golden Saucer at the end of the day for me was a really cool area and I really loved it. So
Yeah.
I mean, I might have been a little harsh on it in the previous chapters, but like it really grew on me once we got to there again. So, but I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, we're going back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I think that's about it. I
Yeah.
think.
We get uh we get a fight with Rune and Elena, and then also
Uh,
Rufus Shinra,
mm,
because we have the
oh
whole like
jeez.
tournament, um, and then Kate Sith betrays the party.
Talk
Uh,
about potion killer right there. Oh my god.
who
I was
Rufus?
flying. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was flying through the potions on that one.
yeah. That fight's hard if you don't know what you're doing. Um,
Mm,
I'm interested. Eventually, I'll get to it on hard mode, and I'll be interested to see what it's like. But yeah, and then chapter 13, chapter 14, they're basically the same chapter. We
mm-hmm.
get a whole section in the Temple of the Ancients with Aerith and Cloud having kind of separate parties. Um, we get a really cool fight with Reno, Rune, and Elena.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Cloud is just being a total jerk the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the the moment after they all go and like face their fears or whatever, and Aerith is giving this big speech about like positivity and we'll overcome it together and stuff, and then Cloud is like, "Are you done?" I was like, "F you, Cloud."
Right. It's very
um,
much the Frodo and Mordor section
yeah,
of Cloud.
yeah,
Like
for
it's just
sure.
like he he was brutal, but he was
Yeah,
definitely like at that point he was becoming Sephiroth. Like it
yeah,
was just like you know at that point Cloud was pretty much lost,
yeah,
and you know I'll talk a little bit more once we get talking about the finale of things, but you know, I thought the chapter three, not chapter three, chapter 13, um, was surprisingly a really long chapter,
it went on forever. I was like,
and
holy crap, this is taking so
and
long.
and personally, there's at least two chapters in this one, in just
Yeah,
one. Like I think that once it gets to Aerith being playable, that could have been a whole other chapter. Like,
Yeah.
but that's besides the point. That's a little bit of like just not really relevant to the story, but just more of like, I don't know, if I would be placing chapters, I would have put a stop there. I'm like, I
Sure.
mean, chapter 13 took me close to 5 hours,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
And it's
I
it's a
mean, there,
linear chapter.
yeah, it's a linear chapter, and I was like, wow, this is going. And
Yeah.
I mean, it was a really cool chapter. I liked the level design, especially once you got deeper into the labyrinth.
Yeah.
Um, what was- the it's funny that I don't know if this was in the original game or not, but like the boss fight at the end where you're like, I don't even know what it is, like the
The
boss's
demon
name
wall.
was, but yeah, the demon wall. All I kept thinking was the fight,
Hmm.
the
The trash
the
compactor.
fighting, well, the trash compactor in mixed with the fight that's in Kingdom Hearts 2 with the
Oh yeah.
in
Yeah,
Peace
yeah, yeah.
Castle. Like, I
Yeah.
was just like, this reminds me of that.
That was in the original. That was a fight in the
It
original.
was,
Yeah.
gotcha. I
Um
wouldn't be surprised by that, but
yeah. The only yeah, there actually wasn't a whole lot of deviation in terms of like fights that weren't
hmm
in the original. I guess it's kind of the same with remake where it's like only a few like whisper fights and then the final boss. Um
hmm
Yeah. Well, so then we get to the forgotten. Well, so end of chapter 13. Uh, Cloud and Aerith kind of fall into an Zach's alternate
hmm
timeline, um,
hmm
and then we get basically a Kingdom Hearts speech from Sephiroth here. Like
oh
I'm not gonna hold you. I rewatched or I replayed that section because I was like I wanna experience this again. I want to see how I feel about it a second time through,
uh
and I still really liked it. But that scene where Cloud and Sephiroth are like flying through the timelines, you know what I'm talking about?
oh yeah
And
yeah yeah
that was like okay, that was basically just all worlds begin in darkness and also end from Sephiroth. That was
yeah.
that's basically what it was. And I
It
again I liked it, but it was not beating the Nomura allegations.
I think this is it's interesting how Aerith is so connected to timelines because now we can
Yeah,
actually see it. I mean, they kind of hint at it in chapter 10 with the Gi,
yeah,
but like Aerith is really connected with the timelines and kind of. I'm skating around talking about the ending right now because and that we're talking about, but like it is interesting of a way of a setup
yeah.
in that regard, and
Well, and they make Aerith a much more. She's much more of like a representative of the planet in some way,
yeah,
where like, and then yeah, you get to the Forgotten Capital. We also get a lot more Zack in this chapter.
hmm
Um, we see him
yeah.
kind
This is
of
where Zach really comes back into play,
yeah. Um,
and then he gets
you
plucked
see,
out. He
yeah,
just gets straight up plucked out of that timeline. Like he's just
yeah.
like
It's pretty funny
Sephiroth
actually.
goes, "I have plans," something along the lines of "I have plans for you," and then just chucks him. Like he
Yeah,
takes him out of the timeline completely.
it's pretty funny actually. Yeah. Um, but then, so we get to the Forgotten Capital,
hmm
and uh, and we have another like the whispers are going crazy, and
hmm
I was a little bit like, do we really need this? I don't know if we need this so much, but I think they were trying to make it clear that like fate this
Yeah,
is supposed to happen, and
and like their way of saying this is the end of the game.
yeah,
Better
kind of.
prepare yourself, type of situation.
Yeah. So we get to, and this is easily the most iconic scene from the original. And I went in, I was like, I was really curious
Mm-hmm.
because we can I think we can let go of the leash a little bit here. I knew Aerith was going to die in the original at this section. I knew it's arguably the most famous plot point in all of video
uh,
games. I was genuinely surprised to learn you didn't know that Aerith
no, I
dies.
didn't. No.
Um, uh,
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, I'm really curious to see how you react to this. But to me, I was like, okay, is Aerith going to die?
Uh,
That was my big question because I was like, well, they're all about changing fate and then I spend the entire final boss rush basically just going, wait, is Aerith dead?
exactly.
Genu-
I was the same
Genuinely,
way.
I was like,
I mean the
wait, hold on, is she dead or is she not? Because then she shows up for the final Sephiroth fight, and I'm like, oh, she's here. I'm so happy to see you, Aerith. And then and then at the end they're like, oh, she died, and I'm like, oh, oh, that's sad.
yeah, it's like you you get to the point where you can like you quite literally break the timeline.
Yeah,
You know, like you block him from doing the killing blow, and then somehow Sephiroth snaps his fingers and then still kills her.
yeah,
You know, like and the conjoining of timelines. I would I would interpret it as that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And you know, Zack has a line in this final boss rush that I thought encapsulated the complete experience for me
Yep.
of the what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he
like
says that and I'm like everybody's with you.
that is totally me going right now because immediately after Eris shows up and like you said,
Yep.
I'm like, is she dead? Like, is she not dead? And you know, and that's where I'm thinking that she's. Well, we'll go into theories and
Yeah.
later, but you know, I'll discuss my theories and all that. But you know, I thought this section was really cool. The final boss. Okay, can I say it? Can I talk about the final boss a
Do
little
it.
bit?
Do it.
Okay, so the final boss rush, that whole section, is easily one of my favorite final boss rushes. Easily.
Yeah. I'm with
Like
you.
it was so well done. Like it's definitely up there with like Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3 final boss
Well,
rushes for me. Like it is
easily surpasses remake.
yeah, it puts remake to shame a little bit.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint with actually remakes Sephiroth fight, I guess, because there is the whole Whisper fight that is before that, which
Yeah.
was okay. But the Sephiroth fight there was not. There wasn't really any phases to it. It was just one fight, and it was more of there
Yeah.
is like mini phases within the fight, but you still have one health bar. You're not like, you know, you're kind of getting interrupted
Yeah.
for like story moments. I guess that's my
Yeah.
kind of the issue. Um, and you know, he does have the Heartless Angel move in that one, but he doesn't have any like moves that will like instant death you.
Yeah.
Whereas this one definitely did. like,
Yeah.
but getting back to like the Genova fight was really cool, especially when like it started off with like Eris theme and then like transition
Yeah.
to uh to the Genova theme. Like that was really cool. Um, and like just having all the players like have a different type of fight with uh Jenova.
Yeah,
Like
that
it
was
was
really
like you
cool.
were, and Sephiroth too. Like there was just like really cool moments, and then being able to play. This was, talk about you not expecting to play as Zack in the beginning of the game. I
Yeah,
was not expecting to fight as Zack at the end of the
yeah,
game.
I
Like I
wasn't
was just
expecting
like,
that either.
oh, Zack's playable. Sold. I just switched over to him. Like I was just like
Yeah,
and he has his own solo fight too. And I'm like, man, this is like he
that's
was
so cool.
really cool, and especially his move set and everything. Like I had a
Yeah,
great time with that portion. And God, I can't even tell you like the amount of tries it took for me to beat Sephiroth because I
yeah,
wanted to beat the game. I genuinely wanted to beat the game. This was actually Monday night a couple days ago, and I played for hours just in this final portion of the fight itself, like against Final Sephiroth. Like
yeah,
I could not get past his final desperation move. Um, with his Octoslash, like I could get, I could work with it before, but some I couldn't figure out how I could stop it because I would kept getting down to one hit on him before he would do that move, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And just out of I had to give up. Like
yeah,
it got to be a point of like, oh my gosh, I got to work in the morning, like, and I'll probably only get like 3 hours of sleep, if that.
oh
Like it
man,
was it was a rough night, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it up for right now. And then the next day, I do beat Final Sephiroth the first try, and I was not
yeah,
expecting to beat him the first try, but I guess it was just a fresh pair of eyes. At that point, I had that fight down to a T. I just needed a fresh pair of eyes and timing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But I do kind of wish I could have completed it in one go, but it honestly, that whole day I was smiling because I was like, man, I can't believe I got a final boss right now that I'm having a difficult time beating, and
yeah,
it's really well done. They cooked with that
fantastic. Yeah,
final boss rush. Like it was really
yeah.
good.
I
I
will
don't know what's
say it's gonna be hard to top it,
it is.
especially if it's Sephiroth again.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll figure something out. I'm sure.
I think they
I
will,
trust them.
but it's going to be a high bar to fill.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I, I don't know. What was your experience with the final boss? Did you have difficulty?
Final Sephiroth was basically the only thing that gave me difficulty, and it only took me a few tries.
Show off.
I will say, it was definitely like down to the wire each time. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely like I lost at the same place every single time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was definitely like I think like what struck me about it was just like there were so many moving parts to the final boss, and
Mm-hmm.
then like to well, what got me I think partially was like I knew Aerith was gonna die, so I was like, I'm gonna not kid
Mm-hmm.
her out, and I'm gonna try to not have so much stuff on her.
Oh, oh, as far as
As far as
the
like
build and
materia and
stuff.
stuff,
Yeah.
and that she still had some stuff. She still had like fire and stuff, which was
Uh-huh.
it was like it was good enough, obviously because I beat him, but like it was like oh I was like oh I kind of wish I had I had prepped Aerith a little bit more. I wish they had the like prepare and retry from Kingdom Hearts
Mm-hmm.
3. Um, But yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that the final Sephiroth fight is probably one of my favorite boss fights in like the Square Enix boss fight mythos.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it's incredibly well balanced. It's
Mm.
not I don't know. It's just the whole thing is incredible,
Yeah.
but the final Sephiroth fight specifically is just like it's such a cool moment. And just to have like one final bout with Aerith before she has to kind of move on from being in the party
Mm-hmm.
is it's just really cool. I really liked I really liked that section of the game. I think I think I understand better what they're going for in
Mm-hmm.
at the end of Rebirth, like
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of Remake I was like, okay, are they like trying to do some like multiverse stuff with like their other Final Fantasy properties, and then like,
Mm-hmm.
how does Kingdom Hearts fit into that, and all that stuff, and it was like, and so like at the end of Rebirth I'm like, no, they are very specifically trying to give Sephiroth a grander goal, and
Mm-hmm.
also tie in a lot more of like the more like ethereal stuff, and maybe give, because the ending, I won't spoil what exactly the ending of the original is, but the ending of the
Mm-hmm.
original is a bad ending according to the developers. So we're theoretically headed towards a good ending with
Mm-hmm.
part 3. So I definitely like I got like, I was like, okay, it's cool to like know where the vision is
Right.
for
Well,
this.
I was it is interesting because it's like I told you before, and I said it on the podcast. It was like my theory was like I think they're going to break the timeline at the end of
Yeah,
at the end of this game, and it's funny because they did and they didn't.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
they kinda did.
and but at the same time, I don't think I realized that Aerith would be um integral to the timeline portion too. Like this is where
Yeah,
I think where I was talking about back in chapter 13 with that whole her connection to Zack's timeline or whatever. I mean, unofficially called Zack's timeline. You know
yeah,
the and kind of way she's set up at the end there, where there's kind of like they're still in that timeline where she dies, but she still exists in a different. The way I'm interpreting it, and I've only seen the ending once, so I can't like this is the way I'm thinking because it's all fresh in my mind. I beat it like two
yeah,
days ago, so um, the way I interpret it is Aerith might play a factor not in the physical world, but in more of the spiritual slash multiversal type of
yeah,
aspect. You know, through time and being that we see like the whispers being like earlier you talk about how the one represents Sephiroth and one represents a planet. I think and how you said Aerith kind of represents has that role of kind of being of the planet
yeah,
and I think that's what's going to counteract Sephiroth's shenanigans of every time he wants to change the timeline into his
yeah,
favor. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like this was the point in which fate was like in which fate was broken, you know, in the regards of
yeah,
now we've unleashed Aerith into into a new power, I guess. So,
yeah. I'm not sure. I'm kind of the perspective that she's dead, and
mm-hmm,
Cloud is communicating with her spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's pretty obvious that nobody else can really perceive her. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and there's the whole reunion thing,
Mm-hmm.
and Cloud having that connection to Sephiroth, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not sure. I'm really curious to see. Um, I'm really curious to see where they go, because like I know how the original ends, but like I said, there's like a bad ending element to it, so I'm not sure how they're gonna handle the ending of part three.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I loved it. I can't say much more than that. I think, the one thing that Rebirth's ending has for me is like there's like a sense of like foreboding about it. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, is the world gonna end? That kind of thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just like contrasting that with how beautiful the scenery is just like it's it's really cool, and it's it I still wonder, like, okay, what's Zach's role in all of this, because obviously he had a role to play in the final boss rush. um yeah, there's a lot of questions, but it is nice to know that, like, yeah, there's a lot of, how do I put this? There I have a lot of questions, but a lot of those questions are more, they're not like theory crafting so much as they're like, okay, how are they going to handle this? How are they going to handle that? It's gonna be really funny opening up the next game, and it's just like it'll be like business as usual almost. They're gonna have they're gonna have a hard time topping opening up the next game on something that isn't Nibelheim, because the Nibelheim section of the game is such an important point, but the next section of Final Fantasy VII is not as, I don't know, it's not as like, it's iconic in its own way, I guess, is the best way I could put it. Um yeah, so I think that's true. I think there's also um I don't know. I'm just really, this game has me really excited for the future. And it has me really excited for Square Enix, their future output. Um
Mm-hmm.
just cuz, like, if this is what they're capable of, what else are they capable of?
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole, like, this only took 4 years. You know,
Yeah, which is
it's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, some part of me thinks that like they started the project before they finished remake, in the context of maybe they did like they worked on the world design and the side content before they actually started working on the story. That
Sure.
would be one of my predictions on that, but because it's just massive. It's
It's
a
just such a
massive
huge
game.
game. Yeah. It's
And
crazy how big it is when
it,
compared to
it
like the dev cycles of other games.
right. And it's funny because they warn us, like we were warned, like, hey, this is going to take you a long time to beat.
Yeah.
Still did not expect that. Like, I still was like, oh, I'll get it done in 60 hours. Like, I thought it was very much like how it was with Final Fantasy 16. Like I thought that like I would
Yeah.
get that done pretty quickly, and I took my time with Final Fantasy 16. Like I played that a little bit more casually than I did with this. Um, but I was
Yeah.
expecting, because the with remake I beat the game in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, but really I really beat the game in 4 days. I'll be honest with you,
Yeah.
because 4 to 5 days, because it was during COVID, and during that time I was still in college, and I had played the first 20 hours in like 2 to 3 days,
Yeah.
and then I had to stop because I
I
had to get
remember.
caught up on my work, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I could not, for the life of me, play it until another week and a half, and then I beat the game. Like
Yeah.
I did put in the same amount of playtime with remake. I meant not remake, rebirth as well.
Yeah.
It just was a bigger
It
game.
was just a much bigger game. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same amount of time and effort too. Let's just put it that way, because the I know you said you got, what was your time when you beat the game itself?
My
Was
final
it 60?
playtime was probably somewhere like 60, 65. I could probably look that up,
Yeah,
actually. Um,
because I know you got yours done pretty quickly.
yeah. I mean,
And
I beat it
I
that weekend because I was like, I
I've
was just, it consumed me. I was like, I'm, I was unsure. I was like, I'm not sure, I've done some growing up in between the time that
mhm.
uh, FF7 remake came out, between
Yeah.
then and now. Like I'm just not sure. I'm really excited for this game, but I'm just not sure I'm the same person. I wonder if I'll be as into it. And
Mhm.
I'm like 5 hours in, and I'm like, this game is my life now. And
Mhm.
uh, I legitimately was like, I was putting in like 10 hours a day at certain points, and it was like, yeah, okay. So I have my texts. Oh, okay. So so I sent you a text
Mhm.
on Sunday of March 3rd, which was day 4 for you, and I was about 43
Gotcha.
hours. I was about 43 hours into the game, and you were about 20 hours into the game, or 18.5, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and you were like, "Oh wow," you were like, "Oh wow, you put in a lot of time."
I was a
Uh,
little, yeah, I was very shocked by that. Like
yeah.
how, because I thought I had put in a lot of time, and then you like doubled that amount. I was like, oh,
It's the
oh,
benefits. It's the benefits of not working. I mean, it's the benefits of being unemployed.
mm-hmm.
That's the like one nice thing is you can put in a lot of time.
It's true.
Uh, but then March 5th is when I actually beat the game. Um, or no, it would have been March 4th, I think, because I
It
beat
was
it.
March 5th.
Well, it's
Oh,
March 5th is when I texted you, but I think it was
gotcha.
like, I think I beat it the night before. And yeah, so it was probably 60 hours. And that
Yeah,
was,
it's fun.
and I stopped like completing regions around Cosmo Canyon. So it was like 20 hours after I got to Cosmo Canyon. So that makes
Well, it's
sense.
it's really funny because I was still going at the same rate as you,
Yeah.
because literally, I was at 18.5 when we talked, you know, about your progress, and then our progress, and you said you were 40 hours in, and then literally a day later. Wait, hold on. Let me pull. I've lost myself. Where'd I go? Yeah, somehow I went a little too far. Yeah. So a day later, I was 30 hours in. So I literally like doubled that amount of where I was, and I was like, so I mean, like I said, we were going at a very specific pace. Now, granted, I probably would have had this game done much sooner if there was not like a lot of outside of the outside world problems. Let's just put it that way. Like
Yeah.
I had a lot of my work was starting to rely on me a lot, and you know, I won't we'll go into details on this on the podcast, but like it was, you know, it was a new responsibility for me. Let's just put it
Yeah.
that way, and it was a lot of time being spent on that, and so outside factors were going in, but in pretty much any chance I got to play, I was still playing
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and I knew it too because I was like, I would check in on you like once every few days or something like that, and I'd be like, "So, how's
mm-hmm.
Rebirth doing?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm in a new part," and I'm like, "Yeah, that tracks actually,"
10
because
hours
I was
later.
like, "Yeah." Well, and I was like, "Yeah, it's." Well, because then sometimes I would be like, "Hey, how's Rebirth doing?" And you would be like in a similar place, and I was like, "Oh, he got stuck doing side quests, didn't he?"
Yeah, because I'll send you the timestamp too, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds about right for this game."
And so I ended with 101 hours.
Yeah.
So
You told me that, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
I
Because I haven't put that much time in. I have to
I
like,
wasn't sure if I was going to hit that mark, but I did hit that mark.
yeah,
Right in the 11th hour. I blame Sephiroth, but I
uh,
appreciate it at the same
uh,
time.
101 hours and 37 minutes. That's right. Yeah. I'm at like 90, like around 95 hours because I've put
Mm-hmm.
because I put some time into hard mode. So,
Mm-hmm.
and also just going back and doing some more mini games and side quests and stuff. Yeah, excellent game. Right now, it's my game of the
Yeah,
year, but that could change. I'm not
I
gonna
can.
count my chickens before they hatch.
I'm not going to lie. Depends on what gets announced this summer. Oh, excuse me. It depends on what gets announced this summer and what's going to be releasing at the end of the year.
Yep.
But like, I'm not going to lie. As of right now, looking at the slate of things, there's no shot. No shot. No
Yeah.
shot.
Right now,
Anybody, anybody beats Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for me.
right now, that's the case, but it's. I mean, no, that's not true because we still got Metaphor, we still got some other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, right now it's like 7 hours is gonna be really hard to beat for me. Um,
And, and you know, it's different because last year, I mean, I've been really treated as a Final Fantasy fan. Like,
yeah, you have.
let's just put it that way. Like, I we had Final Fantasy 16 last year, and I remember playing Final Fantasy 16. I was like, okay, this is so far my front runner for Game of the Year, right?
Yeah,
And but even at that point, I was like, there are a couple of games that could take over that slot, especially Spider-Man, like being a main contender.
yeah,
And it did. It did take over my slot for Game of the Year. It dethroned FF16, even though I retrospectively put a lot more time into that game than I did Spider-Man 2.
yeah,
But that's not for the lack of me not caring. I mean, I did everything in Spider-Man 2 that I could. I got
yeah,
that platinum really quick.
yeah.
Um,
Me too.
but the but as a Final Fantasy fan, I mean, this is what an age we're in. Like,
Right.
ever since Remake came out, you know, you I've I've been fed well. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Yep.
yeah, Stranger of Paradise did come out, and like I didn't play that. I played the demo, and I have it, but I haven't played it yet. Um,
But
but the fact that we
otherwise,
got 16 and Rebirth within a year span,
yeah.
like
Man, oh
like
man.
less than a year. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, also the fact that like 16 has had its own DLC too from
Yeah.
that. So like I've just been fed Final Fantasy content for 8 months straight, pretty much. Like, you know, and I texted you this the other day, and I was like, I did not realize. Uh, I don't know the official title, but like the Leviathan DLC,
Oh, the Rising Tide. Yeah.
yeah, the Rising Tide DLC was coming out a day earlier than what I thought it was. I thought it was coming out on Friday, but it actually came
Yep.
out today. And I'm like, I I mean, for me, I'm like, I just beat Rebirth in like
Yep.
right before. I mean, I couldn't have timed that better. But so I'll be playing by the time next time you see me, I mean hear from me. I'll probably have played Rising Tide DLC. But I was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of ready to let um, the Final Fantasy chapter go for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this was a great like wrap up. Not wrap
Yeah.
up, but like it was an amazing ending. I
Yeah.
loved it,
Well, and
and
yeah.
you know the like it's just the way the credits rolled, and there's just
Yeah.
pure magic in this game, and I really loved it. To me, it's definitely a 10 out of 10.
Yep.
Um, oh, I don't know.
I said
I can't
11 out of
remember.
10.
Yeah, you said it was 11 out of 10, and I think I almost want to. I gotta sit on it a little bit more to think if
That's
it's
fair.
11 out of 10.
That's fair.
But for me, remake was definitely a 11 out of 10. Just I love the pacing
Mm-hmm.
of it. Um, time time of year, like the time it was in my life, how it was. Like there's a lot of factors for me to put 11 out of 10, if that makes sense. But the I don't know if we talked about this or not, but like the combat in this game, they improved the combat so much better than what they had in remake. Um, the only thing, and there's not really a way around it, but they did so much that I was kind of like, you did so much, but yet you still didn't do a proper jump jump mechanic. So
No actual jumps.
uh, yeah, that was a little bit of a disappointment. But other than that, really loved the combat, and I love the
Yeah.
fact that you can do a little bit more ranged attacks too.
Yeah, that was
That was
cool.
fun.
Yeah. I will say the one thing I think Remake has over Rebirth for me is the
Hmm.
fact that Remake is a much more focused experience.
And yeah, yeah, I
That's
would
like
agree with that.
the only thing that it has. But other than that, like it's I don't know, it's much more I don't know, it's just it you can really feel the love in Rebirth. You can feel the amount of love that the creators
Hmm.
have for that game, for Final Fantasy VII. Um, yeah, I just, I guess remake has two things, because I do still prefer Hollow over No Promises to Keep.
I agree with that. I do like Hollow better, but No Promises to Keep. When I first heard it at the Game Awards, I tried to block it out as much as possible, so I
Yeah,
really wasn't paying attention. But
yeah,
even then, I was kind of like, it's not really Hollow. You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's
It's
not like
not Hollow. Yeah, I hope.
um.
I hope that the Part Three's theme is a duet between the two of them. That's
It could
my.
be.
That's
That would be
my.
really cool.
That's my big hope.
And you know the I really bought into the song, not really when it was during the whole Loveless section.
Yeah.
I bought into the song when it ended. So I guess that's the point. I guess that's where you need to really hit home the theme, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought that's when I really bought into the song, and I really like it. But I wasn't sure how, in a story context, how that would play out. You know what I mean? Considering Hollow felt inherently with the game. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, because Hollow plays during
Yeah,
it's like
subtly.
it's a background theme. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
the main theme. No Promises to Keep is definitely like its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. It's I don't want to rag on No Promises to Keep because it's still a great song.
Oh,
It's
it
just
is.
not the same. I just have just a preference. Um. Yeah. So, uh, do you have anything else you want to say about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Oh, I'm sure. The moment we get done recording, there's going to be something that pops up that I
Yeah.
forgot about.
Yeah. I
But
guess the only thing I'll say is the soundtrack spotless,
yeah.
except for the
What was that?
Gungaga theme.
Would you say?
Spotless,
Oh, spotless. Gotcha.
except for the
Yeah.
Gungaga theme.
You know what I'm looking really forward to? So Ezra and I are um, meeting for a concert soon, and
Yep.
um, I'm looking forward to the drive because I got the deluxe edition of this game
Oh,
with
and you
the
got the soundtrack.
I got the soundtrack. So I'm just gonna be listening to it on my way there. Like,
Nice.
so I'm really excited about that. So
Yeah. I will be listening to podcasts on my way there, but I'm sure the FF7 Rebirth soundtrack will feature some some part of
oh
that
yeah,
drive. Um, yeah. Well, with that, I think the only thing we have left to do is some light housekeeping.
hmm
We will be back with your regularly scheduled show probably. Oh, I realized that I don't want to commit too hard, but
hmm
within the next 2 weeks, um,
yeah,
and we'll be back on a regular pace. This was just like we really wanted to get through Rebirth, and we
hmm
really wanted to do a podcast dedicated to Rebirth. So we were like, let's do that. That'll be our next one. So
The thing is, if we did podcasts in between, we would be talking about Rebirth as
and
we go,
and that just
and I
wouldn't.
don't think we would have had a fresh experience talking about
Yeah. And this
Rebirth.
way,
So
and this way, Rebirth won't be the only topic of conversation for the next few
yeah,
podcasts. So,
yeah. So I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I do want to say that, like, to reiterate that this was a massive game.
this was
Like,
a
it was a
massive game.
massive undertaking. So usually, if we in the future go on a hiatus for a game to beat, I don't think it would take nearly as long. To be
Hopefully,
perfectly,
hopefully
uh,
not. Hopefully not.
hopefully. So
Although remake
Um,
part 3 might just do that to us.
that's we got some time on, but
Yeah.
as far as right now, I think that's a big thing right there. But
Yep.
so we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming,
Yep.
like you said.
Just in
So
time for the the gaming news cycle to start ramping
yep,
up.
yep.
So
Yep. We're gonna start knowing what is on the horizon,
yep.
and trailer watches will be coming back.
Trailer watches. I got to bring my lore segment into the front,
Oh yeah,
into the foray too. We're gonna have some fun.
oh yeah.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for listening. And I'm sorry I liked that.